Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again today with another video. Today we're talking Philadelphia 76ers. The offseason is in full swing. Free agency is starting to wind down quite a bit, although there are still moves to be made. And one of the teams that had the most on the line coming into the summer was Philadelphia. Now, last season was not exactly what they were looking for when you have an MVP level player in Joel Embiid and an all-star level guy in Tyrese Maxey. You obviously want to do more than be a first round exit, but overall it was a weird season for them. Of course, Embiid was playing the best basketball of his career and seemingly was on the path to a second straight MVP award. He got hurt, and then Maxey had to kind of put the team on his back for a lot of the season. He dealt with some in and outs. You had role players shifting in and out of the lineup due to injury, as well as with the James Harden trade happening after a few games. It was never that much of a stagnant roster, which led to the Sixers in the playoffs ultimately getting eliminated by the Knicks in 6 games in what was a really fun and close series. It went all the way down to the wire, but Philly does end up losing. However, it was just kind of a bridge to right now this summer, where the Sixers had the chance to build the perfect supporting cast around Joel Embiid and rising star Tyrese Maxey. If there was ever a chance to complete the process, it was right now, and this may be their last chance, because coming into this offseason, they had all the money in the world. The only guys under contract were Joel Embiid, Ricky Council IV, and Paul Reed. Tyrese Maxey was a restricted free agent. They were going to have to give him a bag, but before they sign him to anything, they've got all the money in the world to go ahead and add a third star, add some solid role players. However Daryl Morey wanted to operate, he has all the room in the world to go ahead and do so, as well as some draft picks to make upgrades in the future too. So this was a pivotal summer for the Sixers. They had to hit it out of the park if they wanted to compete in that growingly tough Eastern Conference, and I think they've done a great job. Of course, the big acquisition was signing Paul George to a 4-year, $212 million contract right around the time that free agency opened up. It seemed like for a little bit they weren't going to pursue him, but then they ended up doing so, and I've given my thoughts on this move a couple of times here on the channel, but let me go ahead and recap it. I'm a fan. I think this is a swing they had to go ahead and make. I know paying eventually a 38-year-old Paul George like $50 million isn't ideal, but when you have a guy in Embiid who is injury prone, who is getting up towards his 30s, and we don't know how many years he still has playing at this MVP level, you have to go ahead and capitalize in whatever way you can. You are paying Paul George that money for the first couple years of that contract, maybe even first 3 years, and not so much that last season. And Paul George, when healthy, is still a very productive player and a great fit alongside Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. That's a big three that I think fits all the boxes that you want it to. You've got a big, a wing, a guard, which is of course the optimal trio. Max and Embiid are these high-level scorers. Same thing with PG, but now he can kind of fade into that third guy role, which I think is great for him at this point in his career. Can help him maybe preserve his body a little bit more as you get towards the playoffs. Even with Embiid, like, he can take his foot off the gas a little bit now with an extra score to handle some of the load. If he rests for a couple of games, load manages, Paul George can step up. They can still get wins. Same thing with Maxey, who's young and is a big X factor because he's only getting better rapidly. He just won most improved player, and it feels like there's still so much room for him to grow. I like this trio a lot, especially when you're in a stacked Eastern Conference like we're seeing right now. You've got to take these types of swings. If you added a bunch of great role players, that would have been cool, but I don't think that's putting you over the Boston Celtics, who just ran through the NBA en route to a finals. I don't think it puts you over the New York Knicks, who not only added Mikal Bridges this offseason, but they brought back OG Anunoby. They still got Brunson, a really deep squad overall, and Julius Randle missed their entire playoff run. Their entire basically second half of the season. He's going to be back and is an all-star, all-NBA level guy. So competing with those two teams, not to mention the Bucks, we'll see what happens with them. They've made some interesting additions here in this offseason. Plus, Giannis is just unstoppable. The Pacers are getting better. They just went to the Eastern Conference Finals. The Cavaliers kept Donovan Mitchell on that extension. Now they can reshape the roster around him. The Eastern Conference is a bloodbath. You have to do whatever you can to add talent, and Paul George taking the swing on him is a move that I think was necessary. But while Paul George is the big fish, the move that everybody's talking about, I don't think enough people are discussing the moves they've made outside of that, the moves that really make them this intriguing roster going into next year's East, like bringing back Kelly Oubre, who last season was one of their more reliable guys. They looked to him a ton to be that third option some nights, even a second option if Embiid or Maxey were missing games, and Oubre did a really solid job. The efficiency wasn't great, but this year he's going to have a lot less on his plate with Paul George now out there, as well as Maxey and Embiid continue to play at the level that they do. So I think that efficiency will come up. He can be more optimized and gives them just some solid defense and a guy who can give them some buckets in that starting lineup. lineup, or if you want to move him off the bench, you could do that too. Another guy they added that I really like is Caleb Martin. Martin, of course, has been really good for the Heat the past few years as the star role player. He was in conversations to win Eastern Conference Finals MVP last season when the Heat made the finals as the 8th seed. He was phenomenal. He is a known playoff riser, which is big for the Sixers team that has struggled to get over the hump. And in the regular season, he can just knock down some spot-up threes, attack off the dribble, and just give you a little bit of everything, some defensive versatility. The shot was, again, kind of like Oubre, not fantastic last year. He shot 34.9% from deep, but I think once again, with a lot more attention off of him with Embiid and Maxey and Paul George out there, I think Martin can be really good in this new role. Beyond those guys, they made some interesting additions off the bench too, like bringing back Andre Drummond, who was here a couple of years ago, was probably the best backup big they've had of the Embiid era, was really good last season for Chicago, and now he lands here at a spot he's familiar with, and is just going to give them some solid minutes. He doesn't have to play too much because Embiid, especially when you get to the playoffs, is going to play like 36, maybe up to 40 minutes, so you only need him out there for a little bit. Can really help with some rebounding, because that is one of the bigger concerns I have with this team. They weren't a great rebounding team last year. Coming into this season, they definitely lack a little bit of size in that starting lineup. Theoretically, if it is Maxey, Oubre, Paul George, Martin, and Embiid, I would like to see them add another front court presence, even if it's just coming off the bench. But Drummond is definitely going to help in the minutes that he's out there, and I like just bringing in another competent backup big for Embiid. It's something he's really lacked throughout his career. You also add Eric Gordon, who last season started at times for the Phoenix Suns when they dealt with some injuries, was one of their critical bench pieces, and he was pretty good. He shot 37.8% from deep. That's huge, especially on almost 6 attempts per game. He's going to benefit a lot from playing alongside Embiid and Maxey. They're going to get him a bunch of great looks. He's got some great range, and all he has to do is spot up out there, knock down some threes, and he's going to be a big benefit for those guys. I also really like them adding Jared McCain out of Duke in the draft. That was one of my favorite fits for them. Gives him somebody in that backcourt who's young, who can knock down some shots. He shot over 40% from deep with Duke last season, and in the tournament, averaged 21 points per game, 50% from three, so he's built for those moments. I don't know how much you're going to need him to play in his first season, because it feels like they'll probably add another veteran guard to that rotation, but McCain is a really interesting option that I do think could produce at a decent level from day one if you need him to. I also like Ricky Council, who didn't play a lot for the Sixers last season, only in some spot minutes when they were really dealing with injuries in that one stretch, but he was really good in the minutes that he played, and as I'm recording this video, just torched my Oklahoma City Thunder in his first Summer League game, knocking down threes, pressuring the rim really well. He's got great athleticism. He's a really interesting young player that I don't think enough people are talking about as somebody with a lot of potential that I also think could contribute right away in this rotation. As currently constructed, this is a really good roster on paper. You've of course got an MVP level player in Joel Embiid, which is automatically a huge win. I know some people have a lot of concerns about his viability in the playoffs, and a lot of people just don't like the foul bidding that he does, but Embiid is an MVP level guy through and through. He was putting up a 36 point per game season before injury last year. He is one of the top 3 players in the world, and if you can keep him healthy for a full season, the Sixers are terrifying regardless of who they're facing, not to mention with Maxey, who still has so much potential, could really build off of last season with a new talented third star in Paul George, who is such a massive improvement over Tobias Harris, who was supposed to be that third guy last year and over the past few seasons. PG fits seamlessly next to those guys as a defender. He's going to really give you a boost there. He's great whether he's on ball, off ball, can catch and shoot with the best of them. I just think that big 3 is seamless. You had good role players alongside the big acquisition with Kelly Oubre and Caleb Martin and Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond, Jared McCain in the draft. I think Daryl Morey has done a fantastic job, and there's still plenty of ways to improve this roster. Another reason I like PG being signed to the Sixers so much is because they didn't have to give up like 3, 4, 5 first round picks to bring him in like a lot of teams have to do for all-star level guys. They could just go out there and sign him, and now they've still got all their picks to make moves down the line, including a pick in 2028 fully unprotected from the Clippers, the same team they just took Paul George from, and feels like they could be on the verge of an implosion over there in Los Angeles. They've got a swap in 2029 with the Clippers too, which is also intriguing. Their own picks, like in 2030, how good is Embiid going to be with these injuries if he's still here? The Sixers have a lot of assets that could really upgrade this roster if they need to throughout the season. If a big name player becomes available, they could go ahead and cash in some chips, which is also a massive luxury. And one way they could aid themselves in doing that is with KJ Martin. If you didn't know, KJ Martin was on the team last year, didn't play a lot of minutes, but they still have his cap hold, and what the Sixers could do is sign him to like a $15 million contract. And you might think that's crazy for KJ Martin, but what that could help them do is if you give him like a $15 million contract, that now gives you a salary that you can go ahead and match with opposing teams alongside those picks, because he's going to be expiring, to make one of those upgrade deals. Like if a really good role player around that range becomes available, the Sixers have some of the best draft capital and an expiring contract to throw at that team. That's going to be a hard offer to beat unless a team is willing to throw in some really good assets. I'm not saying they're positioned to definitely make a move, but they've given themselves the flexibility to do so, and that's part of what's so intriguing with the Sixers team. Not only do they look really good right now, if you ask me, but there's a lot of room to still improve if they need to go ahead and do so. So all in all, I think the Sixers have had a basically perfect offseason. Again, it's not finished. There are still other moves to be made, and maybe I won't like some of the other signings, but for the moment, I like everything they've done. I like adding Paul George. I like bringing in Caleb Martin, bringing back Kelly Oubre, re-adding Andre Drummond to this team. I like Eric Gordon. I like the draft pick of Jared McCain. I like that they've now got Maxey locked up on that long-term contract. I'm super high on his upside. I like that it seems like they're finally going to bring back the classic black Sixers uniforms from the early days with Allen Iverson. That's something they should have done forever ago, but I guess better late than never. I think the Sixers are just really hitting out of the park. Daryl Morey deserves a lot of credit. He's done a great job. I'm excited to see what they do from here and how they stack up in that Eastern Conference. If you ask me, I think it's the Celtics are still clearly the team to beat. I don't think anybody's going to doubt that. But the Knicks and Sixers are right there at the 2A and 2B spots. And if the Celtics deal with some injuries, like Porzingis is supposed to miss the first month or so of the season, it seems like, if not a little bit more with his surgery. If they deal with some more injuries, or if they just don't quite have the same punch to them next season, the Sixers and Knicks feel like two teams that could really step up and take the mantle in the Eastern Conference. And at the very least, Philadelphia has given themselves a better fighting chance, in my opinion, than they would have otherwise if they didn't go after Paul George, if they didn't make these aggressive moves. If they had just stood pat, I think this was exactly the right route to go. I'm excited to see what they can do. And I'm someone who is rooting to see the Sixers succeed. I'm not one of those people that wants to see Joel Embiid fail, that hates Philadelphia. It's a fun team. I want to see Embiid finally get over the hump. I'm rooting for him, and I hope he can stay healthy, because nothing matters here if Embiid doesn't stay healthy. If he gets injured, it's all going to come crumbling down. Hopefully we finally get a healthy season, and hopefully we see him replicate what he was doing last year, because I want to reiterate, I think if he stayed healthy, Embiid was not only going to win MVP, but he was going to run away with the award that otherwise was a hotly contested race. Also, Nick Nurse is just a great coach. He did a great job with this team last year. Interested to see what he does with the new talent in town, how he orchestrates things. It's going to be a lot of fun. I would love to hear your thoughts on the Sixers. Do you agree with me that they've done a great job this offseason? Do you hate it? Are you kind of in the middle? Do you just need to wait and see? And what do you think the ceiling is on the Sixers team right now? Could they beat the Boston Celtics? Could they make it to the NBA Finals? Do you think they're still a second round exit like they usually are? Do you have them a tier below the Knicks? Are they in that same tier? Where do you have the Bucks in this whole thing? Because they still are involved in the equation, if you ask me. But yeah, I appreciate you all watching. Leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. I will see you all later. Real one, say it back.